And we're live.
Hey everybody, this is Ken Christian. Welcome to this Google Hangout. It's an auspicious occasion in my history, and maybe in yours too. I don't know if you've seen a Google Hangout yet, but they're going to be proliferating because it's a great new way, a little glitchy at times, but a great new way to communicate ideas to people in a live format instead of on video. So this is going to be fun. It's going to be informative because I don't think there's any topic that could be more important to all of us than ways we hold ourselves back. I mean, we all want to move forward. Everybody wants to do more or fulfill their potential in some way, express their true desires, and come alive with their career and their social relationships. Everybody wants those kinds of things. And inevitably in our own personal history, almost all of us know there are moments when we came right up upon the very thing we've been wanting for so long, and we kind of froze, like a deer in the headlights sort of experience where you go, I actually could have what I want. Should I do this? Now, most of us have experienced that, and a number of us multiple times. And there are ways in which it can be a choice between two really exciting things, and you think better of what you always thought you wanted to do because you're in a sober moment now. But there's a way that we can duck out on the things that we want most, and it's really self-limiting, and it is self-sabotaging. We undo our own chance at success and at happiness. So today, I'm on, and I want the people who are on with me to introduce themselves and let you know who they are. They're extremely competent professionals in their own field, and all of us know from the inside what it's like to hold back and stifle our own initiative and sabotage ourselves. But we also have professional careers in which we observe other people. So first, let me just have everybody say who they are. Let's start with Lolita. We're waiting for one more person who's going to join us, two panelists that we thought we had. Unfortunately, at the last minute, were not able to keep their commitment because of conflicts that they had from the beginning. So, but anyway, Lolita, would you please start and say a little bit about what you do and your profession and the work you're up to?
Yeah, my name is Lolita Amos, and I'm from, let's see, now it's sunny Indianapolis, Indiana. We've had a lot of gray days here lately. And professionally, I'm an executive coach, and I've been leading an executive coaching in a professional development firm, strategic planning firm for about 16 years, and been coaching for about 22 years. And I work with executive management teams, mostly in and around technology and life sciences, hospitals, surgical centers, places like that. And the things that I get to interact with people about mostly are issues around collaboration, lack of creative problem solving, and stuff like that, right? And a lot of, surprisingly, with technology, barriers to their expression of creativity. I am finishing my doctorate, thank you, Ken, in executive coaching, my doctorate in psychology in executive coaching. Thank you, Ken. And my thank you to Ken is he got me off of a complete dead stop with relationship to my relationship to my degree, and really got me moving powerfully in a way that has me not suffer in my work. So that's a little bit about me.
Thank you, Lolita.
You're welcome.
And Brandy. I'm going to introduce Brandy a little bit. Brandy is, I've described her in a variety of ways. I don't know if you've seen the posts or whatever, but Brandy is the last person on the planet that I would imagine being good at geek stuff, and yet she is. She's producing this show today, so if anything goes wrong, it's in Brandy's hands, but look at how well it's going so far. I mean, nothing's blown up, and we almost started on time. And we're waiting for one more person to join us, and that may be the one thing that doesn't work, but that's not Brandy's fault. It's the problem is with Google Hangout. But in any case, it's hard to get through, and this is new technology. But Brandy, please tell the audience about your wide-ranging interests and your activities, because it's significant the number of things that you do and do well.
Thank you. I'm humbled, and thank you for that awesome intro. Yes, I'm definitely the non-tech girl, and so it's fascinating that I got into Hangouts. I've been in marketing for 20 years. I was also a public speaker on communication and behavioral styles, and then I happened upon Hangouts, and then just thought, this is a fantastic way for people to engage with their worldwide audience and really close that gap. And so, how I really been passionate about Hangouts has been that, like we're having this conversation, and you're having these honest conversations about self-sabotage. In a show I was on yesterday, they were having real raw truths about how we feel fear as entrepreneurs. So it's bringing all of these amazing people together to be able to share their experience, live on air, interact with their audience, and and then also help people. And really, my driving force is to help people achieve their goals, and that always has been my, my mission statement. And so this is just another way to help people that have a wonderful message like yourself, that have something to share and just get it out to that broader audience and interact with people. And I love it. So yeah, that's it.
Okay. Thank you. And Jean, are you out there somewhere? Can you hear us? Okay. We will hope that Jean joins us later on. Jean and Lolita have been participating in a program called Breakout. Breakout Your Academy is the long label, but they've been clients of mine since last January. And so when Lolita gives me credit for moving her along on her dissertation, it's been very mutual and very in and out, back and forth kind of collaboration between the whole group of people. People devoted to making a move and getting away from the way we self-handicap and the way we self-sabotage. And Lolita, I would love for you to talk about self-sabotage in management teams and what you've seen. I mean, I think everybody knows what self-sabotage is. It sounds kind of sinister. And today what we're going to focus on is the everyday garden variety, ways we put a lid on what we could be and who we are and what we express. But for starters, can you talk a little bit about that, Lolita, where you've seen self-handicapping in the boardroom?
Yeah. One of the big areas that I've seen that in is around relationships. Like the manager that was really, I don't even want to say a Nazi about it. He was just so aggressive about people being on time to work, but when he would call meetings, he was the last one to show up, right? So violating relationships, and people that were abrasive, people that, I think bought into the myth of the manager as, this hard driving, single person making the decisions all on their own. And I think in our leadership mythology, I think that's what sells. But what I see people really failing and really getting what we call derailed, it mostly is around relationships, about their ability to network powerfully, to move up the ladder, or to stay there once they get there. Their ability to solve conflicts with people, or their ability to generate conflict where there needs to be conflict. I mean, that's another big one too. People that are really conflict averse, as well as people that are conflict inappropriate, right? I mean, I think that's a good way to put that. But a lot of that, like an example, was a gentleman who, because he produced results by hook or by crook, made the company a lot of money. But he cost the company a lot of money as well. And where he cost the company a lot of money was in relationships with clients. That he produced the result, but they felt the wear and tear in the process of getting that done. And the company felt the wear and tear. Like, he would make these impossible promises, mostly for self-aggrandizement, as I really got talking to him, that he couldn't fulfill them. Right, and then it was canceling vacations. He canceled his secretary's vacation to go see her daughter get married. There was all of that stuff, and when he made that first big mistake, there was no money in the emotional bank account for anybody, and they ended up letting him go. right?
Right.
So a lot of it really is about relationships that have them not be able to be collaborative, not share information with each other. It's really about relationships.
Right. Okay, and obviously not so often in the boardroom you see timidity as a factor, but timidity is one of the things that's a big block to a lot of people getting somewhere, and it's not like they're necessarily shy, but when it comes to their own personal desires and wishes and goals that are close to their hearts, suddenly they get a little like want to put the brakes on sort of thing and shut down. And have you seen that in your work?
I have, and oddly enough, well, not even oddly enough, a lot of it is cultural, and it's people of color, like particularly people from high context cultures that really value relationships, like people from a lot of the Asian diaspora, and a lot of women having a real hard time saying this is what I want and here's how I think that this project should go. So there's that as well, and I think that sabotage on both sides. One is for the manager of somebody like that not being able to really appropriately call them out, and then sabotaging the team because you're not getting the value of what they know. And on the side of that other person who may be a little bit more reserved or more respectful or whatever, not being heard and not being able to be known as a real contributor.
Okay, great. I see that Jean has joined us.
Yay.
Jean, please
Hello.
introduce yourself. Can you get a little more light on your face at all, do you think, Jean?
No.
No? Okay.
In a word, no.
All right. Jean is known in our group as Feisty Jean, and you see some of her feistiness right now. But anyway, Jean, please introduce yourself, say what it is you do. It's such amazing work you have with your clients, and let us hear about it.
Hi, my name is Jean Grigsby, and I am a writer. I'm based in Maine, rural Maine, and my business name is The Right Approach, and I provide marketing, public relations, and writing services for all kinds of clients. I do everything from grant writing to resume and professional business services writing, and website content, and pretty much everything you can think of that requires some of the written word. So.
Okay. Do you do marketing copy at all?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Jean, when you have worked with clients, how have you seen them subvert themselves in one way or another that you would call it self-sabotage?
Well, I think for a lot of people, it's very difficult to stand back from themselves and take a real clear look at what their strengths are. And I think one of the things that you have taught me, Ken, is that people really need to recognize their strengths and their weaknesses and think about reframing their experiences in ways that are just not completely negative. And I think especially with my female clients, I find that there's a lot of focus and emphasis on what they didn't do well or how they didn't succeed. And I find that through the work I've done with you, I'm able to help people and myself really understand ways that maybe their experiences can be reframed and understood in a more positive light.
Gina, I think you're going to go along with this statement. I think everybody on the panel is. My personal observation is that self-attack and self-aggression is probably the most deadly form of self-sabotage. And oddly enough, people who self-attack often feel that it's virtuous what they're doing. And really what they're doing is reducing their creativity, lowering their own IQ. I mean, if you go into a negative emotional state, and that's what attacking yourself produces, is a negative emotional state, you literally lose about 30 points of your IQ.
Mm.
You're not as accurate in your judgments. You don't make good decisions. Physicians who are not in high positive emotional states make lousy diagnoses, and they don't even do as well at surgery. It's not a pretty state, and yet people can feel somehow that it's good for them to be hard on themselves, that in some way it's going to purify them or get them better, and what they're really doing is sabotaging themselves. Brandy, can you talk about that from the point of view of clients that you have or from your own experience?
Myself off screen and muted, sorry, yeah. Well, yeah, I think that both of them have spoken, greatly to that we have that, and you just spoke to it as well. Well, in regards to Hangouts, let's just use Hangouts as an example, is, not being comfortable with the technology or the fear of being seen or of making a mistake and how horrible that would be, and to be shamed in public. And it's like, well, it's just an hour out of your life. If it goes wrong, you can pull it down. It's not there forever. And so it is fascinating to watch that. And then of course, I think that we all teach from where our pain points are as well. And so I've experienced that as well in my own life, trying to push through that fear and feeling that fear and going forward. And we spoke about this yesterday on another show, is that, in the face of fear, take the bold step, because nothing is as horrible as your mind is trying to make it out to be. And so I remind myself that a lot, like, am I going to die from this? And like, that's usually my go-to for that. Like, would I really die if this happens? And taking it all the way through. In the grand scheme of my life, how big is this? If you look over your whole life, that's kind of my go-to for that. So. Yeah.
People that I work with and get to know me well, I don't put this out all the time, but I'm a minister's son, and one of the things that I've heard regularly, explicitly said to me, you need to be an example. Boy, did I take that and run with it and generalize it to a lot of things. And so I had this feeling forever. And up until 3 years ago, the first time I tried to do an online webinar, I experienced what was mortification about bungling this webinar. And you know what I wound up doing? I wound up doing a 90-day YouTube video challenge where for 90 consecutive days I had to deliver to YouTube a video. And that'll get you past a lot of inhibitions. It really will. But on this, I was go to meeting, go to webinar, whatever it was, I found out like the day before that it wasn't really Mac friendly, and I had a Mac.
Mm.
So on the last day, while this thing is going to happen like at 6 o'clock at night, all day long I'm trying to figure out how I can make it work. And so then they tell me I have to have 2 Macs side by side. Well, what that eventually produces is a 3-second delay between the two things, and I'm getting audio from both, and it was tangling up my brain, and I finally just, instead of saying, I've got the craziest thing going on, folks, no, I had to stay and roll and be, whatever, and crap was coming out of my head. It was like I couldn't hear anymore, I couldn't think anymore, and I just said, okay, that's the end of our webinar, and I stayed away from webinars for months.
Mm.
For months, because I had this issue that if you don't do it well if you're going to do it. And I still subscribe to that. But I also subscribe to the idea that, hey, I'm a human, and boy, do I do some crazy ones. And the ones that I do, one of the ways that I am self-sabotaging is I will leap into something that I want to do, and then I'll think, well, wait a minute, do I know everything? And I'll be very, very confident, and but then I'll actually wind up with too many plates that I'm spinning at the same time. And that is a way that I can undo quality in my life and make me run ragged. And I work on that one. And I'm much better than I was. But when they're really ingrained, you have to work all the time. You got to keep your eyes open. This is not easy work. It's just that the alternative is to never get anywhere and never achieve the life that you really want. Never express what you want to express, and maybe not get close to certain people that you could have had a good relationship with, not taking that job in the city that would have made a difference. You know, all those things you held back on, all our regrets as adults tend to be about things we didn't do, not big mistakes we made. So thank you for what you said, Brandy. Jean, what about you? Do you want to chime in with anything else about how you can tangle yourself up and what you have to work on? Or no?
No, not right now.
All right.
I'm good.
All right. All right. Okay.
My turn.
Go.
I got something to talk about. See, the thing that I love about my relationship with Ken is, you know, I'm an executive coach and I've been doing this for 2 decades. And, you know, I have friends that ask me, why is it that I've engaged an executive coach to work with me when I'm working with these other people? It's like, can't I fix myself, right? And to that I tell people, one is that there's really nothing broken about me, but also I think the best way that I've described it to people is, like, I've got this cousin Sherry. She is a beautician without equal. She's amazing, right? Amazing. I mean, she's gotten a hold of my head and turned it into something short of the Eiffel Tower. I'm like, what is this that she's done to me, right? But she doesn't cut her own hair because she doesn't have that perspective to see the back of her noggin, right? It's like dentists don't pull their own teeth. And I don't try to coach myself because I need somebody that's got that that perspective that comes with distance, that can help me see the stuff that I'm in the soup paddling and can't see for myself. And one of the things that's like a front of the hand, back of the hand between me and my clients that we really do share is a tendency towards burnout. You know, working all around the clock, like, oh my God, you know, I sleep with, I wake up, my darling, blah, 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 you know, it's like that. And I remember it was about almost a year and a half ago, not last summer, but the summer before, I had a client who called me and said, Lolita, I'm in trouble. And I heard all this noise in the background. It was crazy. She and her BlackBerry and her grandson were on a ride at, what's the one in Florida, Disney World. And she said she couldn't put it down, and she was trying to answer phone calls on this ride with this grandchild. And and there's part of me that was like, oh girl, you are in real trouble. And then there's that other part of me that when I went to bed that night with my BlackBerry on my nightstand, I had that same thought, like, uh-oh, you know, maybe this is something that I need to work with somebody about, to really think about. And I know from the literature on concentration and focus that when you really get burned out, when you really get tired, you're operating kind of at the level of somebody who's chemically altered. You know, like I've had a couple of drinks. So I'm not operating at peak performance. I'm not operating at peak efficiency. And for my clients, neither are they. The challenge, though, is, and I don't know if anybody else has seen this, that we live in a culture that seems to applaud people who multitask, which I think is doing a whole lot of things poorly, who burn the candle at both ends because they're driven and they're go-getters and all of that. And we're not thinking about that these people are really spending time away from their families. They're not recharging their batteries, and they're depleting themselves. And by the time I got you know, like crawled to Ken and said, please, oh please, can you work with me? Is I was one of those people that was really depleted. Yeah. And you know, before I decided to go back and start working with clients again, I needed to get to the bottom of that so that I didn't bring that into my the way that I was relating to my clients. But I also didn't want that in between us, that that I was coaching them to do something that was really beyond me. Make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can coach people to do things that aren't good for them at all because we think that's what we're all supposed to be doing. You know, in my book, Your Own Enemy, Breaking the Habit of Adult Underachievement, I have this recipe of 15 tasks you can do to really change your life. And the first task that I listed, and I think it stopped more people from continuing the book than anything else, was pleasure, to give yourself every day at least 30 minutes of time that's personally yours, downtime for you, for literature, for music, for whatever soothes and feeds your soul. And I swear, a lot of people had the hardest time with that. So I reshuffled the deck, and now it's like way late in the season. But people have a hard time all of us have a hard time being kindly to ourselves if we don't feel we're meeting some kind of horrible external standard for what we're supposed to do. And that is ultimately sabotaging each day, because it's like each day is a little bit like being in a prison. You're structured, you don't really accomplish much, you're running around feeling really, really busy and worn out, but you don't have a lot of satisfaction and a lot of depth to your life. And so sometimes people think, you know, since I'm the maximize your potential kind of guy, that I'm going to be all about hard work and whatever. Well, there's ways to work, and there's ways to just wear yourself out. Focused attention, the thing you mentioned, Lolita, is powerful. And when people take blocks of time for focused attention, they can triple what they can actually get done in a day. But if you've got things pinging you and you're trying to write something, you know, I was talking to poor Brandy. I say poor Brandy, but she had a really busy day. It was kind of like a train wreck of a day yesterday. And late in the evening, she was like Mother Teresa, you know, just while she was trying to bandage herself up, she was giving blood to me. No, she was supplying me with information, and she was doing all these things to get today's presentation out. And it's wonderful, but she knows she can't do that all the time. And it's really, we can be very beguiled by how important we are to other people, and we can sabotage ourselves and our health. And I know, Lolita, that was really, you know, you alluded to that, but your health was in tough straits, and you've done an enormous amount of work on that, and you changed your schedule in some intriguing ways, and all of that has made your life a lot more pleasant.
Yeah, not only made my life more present, but there's more of me left for my family and my friends, right? And I didn't realize that there was so much of me that the people around me that were missing, right? Because I was always either working on something, thinking about working on something, making myself wrong for not working on something. And I hear that from clients as well, like, can never shut down. Like it's something wrong with us if we do. And I would say, in addition, you and I have had several conversations about this. As women, it really can be kind of tough for us to shut down. Like, I know in my family, I'm the go-to person when things go sideways. And even when my mother-in-law was sick, the doctors in Florida called me in Indiana. When my father-in-law was sick, they called me in Indiana. And that's not an uncommon experience for women. I heard a woman that was talking, I can't remember the name of the reporter, who was a reporter for NPR, that talked about being in, I think she was in Fallujah, and she got a call long distance from the school nurse saying, your kid is really having trouble breathing. You need to get here and pick him up, just as the phone went dead and the chopper is still moving. And she had to make some really, really hard choices for herself about how she was going to make herself more accessible to her family and all of that. But there's some of those kinds of conversations that we're having as well. And I think for women executives, with all the conversation about the Lean In book and Carol Sandburg and all of that, that it leaves you with the impression, I think, sometimes for women in the workplace, that there really is no such thing as enough. I mean, they really can't do enough. And and that makes it hard for us to shut down. It makes it hard for us to say no. I can't help you. You need to call my husband. I can't help you. You need to call the boy's father. It can be tough.
Right.
Ken, I'd like to go back to what you were saying a little bit about focusing on pleasure, because I think that as part of a daily structure to have time blocked out for pleasure was at first to me a very daunting challenge. I didn't really know what that meant exactly. And what I found fascinating was that as I kept track of it, I realized how simple those things are and how much of a pattern there is to them for me, and that it doesn't have to be anything extraordinary. It doesn't have to be, for women, it doesn't have to be a spa day. For me, there's certain kind of music. If I put it on and dance to it for 15 minutes, I'm recharged, completely recharged. If I spend time in my garden, I'm completely recharged. So I think for people who may be, listening to this chat, the notion that it has to be something big and bold is not the case at all. It's very simple things, but just making a point of scheduling it in is what makes a huge, huge difference. And I really, attribute my ability to do that to my work with you.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. I know you've worked at it, and one of the things that really makes a career rewarding is to be working with good material, people who really are ready to give and ready to take the leap. In other words, risk that fear that holds so many people back and makes their life wither. You're not saving yourself from anything when you run away from fear, because that fear is often 60% or 70% of the time or more. I actually think in our culture, 90% of the time, fear is actually excitement misinterpreted. Because we're at the edge of doing something and we feel a level of excitation, and then we start talking and we say, well, what if it disappoints me? What if I'm not as good at it as I think I will be? Or what if I do it and it doesn't turn all the lights on that I thought it was going to turn on? Because we have this way, like you were talking about pleasure, putting it in some special category. We have this way of thinking that if we really surrendered ourselves the right way to our true destiny, we'd have this life that would be so ethereal and whatever. And then if it weren't that way, we'd be disappointed. Well, hey, you got problems at any level. You're always going to have problems. You're just going to have more interesting ones than feeling stagnated and not knowing what to do about it, or feeling so worn down and tired that all the creativity is out and the juice that makes life worthwhile. It's no wonder you can stare across at a partner that you've known for years and you adored at one time and just feel exhausted. And it's not that you're really disinterested in that person. It's just that you've driven yourself into the ground. And I've talked to a lot of people who've had adrenal failure. I mean, it's just like they push so far, so long, they actually wear their bodies out. So all of this is really important stuff. If we talk about what fear alone costs us, we could have talked the entire session, but I wanted today to look at the number of ways we can undo ourselves and sabotage ourselves. Now, I want to say something at this point. I'm hoping, it just occurs to me now, we should have done this 2 seconds into this meeting. Are we getting comments that let us know, Brandy, that people can hear us and the sound works and so on?
Yeah,
Okay.
we have a few viewers, and actually, Mark McDonald had asked Lolita and Jean to let us know if they were would they like to connect on social media. So be sure to go on Ken's Facebook page if you are. Also, Lolita is leaving in just a couple of minutes. So while I'm looking at the other comments, Lolita, you want to go ahead and tell the audience where they can reach you if they want to hire you, your coaching, whatever you'd like to endorse. I know you have to leave in a couple minutes, so I wanted to give you that opportunity.
I thank you for that. I appreciate that. You can find me at totalteamsolutions.com. My email address is llamos@totalteamsolutions.com. That's where you can find me.
Okay,
Perfect.
great. Now, one of the persons who was going to join us couldn't make it because of getting jammed. Another one had to go on an errand, actually an outing with his daughter. And he's a guy who runs one of the most powerful and influential recruiting firms in the whole southeast part of the country. And he wanted to take it higher. He wanted to do more. He wanted to stretch what he could do. And he's envisioning great ideas. And he's been carving away at the things that caught him, rather, not taught him, but got him tangled up. And he's doing things, and I wish he were here today because I had some questions just in mind for him. But basically what we're talking about is little tiny ways that cumulatively bring our lives down several octaves. And I'm going to go back to what I said earlier about happiness. A lot of people think, well, I'm not happy. I'm so-so, and what can you expect? There's a lot going on in life. That description, so-so, is actually equally negative in its effect on you as being in a low negative mood. They're functionally equal. And the reason is that you've got happiness competing with negative feelings, and that's what the so-so is about. And the negative feelings are suppressing the happy. Sounds like a fire alarm. Maybe it's time for you to go, Lily. Anyway, okay. Anyway, it's really crucial that you move yourself if you want to get out of this self-sabotage. Move yourself to positive states more of the time. Now, I would like to hear from the panel. You've already mentioned, Jean, some things that you do to elevate your mood, and it's not a small thing, as we know from brain research. Brandy, what can you say about that? Some things you do.
Way to put me on the spot, Ken. Yeah, it's funny because I've come up, as more recently, with a lot of, tremendous opportunities to, somebody commented in our Facebook comments that I'm everywhere and easy to find, and so to keep on reminding myself, and you spoke to this, is to, the fear is the excitement piece of it, and to keep realizing that it's a pattern, it's not real. I've done a lot of, I worked with a neuroscientist a couple years ago, just really about trying to get those neural pathways, we can retrain our brain, but it's going to naturally go back to that, and just to be reminded that it's not an overnight thing. I just can't think myself into happiness. And another thing is that that comparison. I think social media, we see everybody's trailer of this great life, and we're comparing our life to this great presentation of what they are. And then myself included, when I see my stuff, I'm like, oh, I don't post that I'm, having a bad day or that I'm falling apart or, so it's fascinating. I think social media has done a lot of, it's good because we all connect, but we also do a lot of comparing what happy is, and that to me is a challenge, because we think that, and you talked about that, like when we get all of that, that now I should be happy, or this is what it should look like, or now I should be stress-free because I have all of these great things, but then all of your other stuff comes up, and so it's that constant reminder to keep, trying to relay those neural pathways and make them stronger to the new connection that you want to be, as opposed to the old and the familiar.
Yeah, and one of the things that I used to talk to people about was to tell them to directly go up against their belief systems and counter them and change them. And there's a real value in doing that when something's really locked in. But brain science tells us that if you create, imagine two pathways across a grassy field, and this one leads up to a certain place that you went all year, all summer long, and so it's now worn an actual groove in the grass. Now, over the winter, the grass is going to come back when it rains and all that. You haven't been out there walking, but there's still going to be a trace of that pathway, even though it's overgrown to a degree. You'll still be able to see it just because you walked on it so much. The way around getting tangled up in an old pathway is to carve a new pathway in another direction. And there are ways to do that, and that can get you out of the direct competition. Because in every showdown between an old habit and a brand new one, the old habit is going to win unless you are paying really close attention. And attention is one of those things that helps you design your own habits that go in a new direction. But one of the ways is to not exactly do your day in every way the way you always did it. It's easier to shift your day in a large sense and get a lot more practice more quickly because everything in your day is not announcing the same patterns that you've been doing. Am I making sense?
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Okay. Yeah. I always think, that's, I'm lost here in the middle of these words. Am I really still making sense? Okay. Anything you want to add, Jean, about things you've observed either with clients or yourself or observed in the group, the work you've done with getting past some of the limiting habits? Anything you want?
Well, I think that one thing that was very reassuring to me was, sort of follows along with what you just said, which is that those changes are going to be uncomfortable and you're going to feel, it's not going to feel natural to you. In fact, continuing on with the habit is going to feel very comfortable. And so if you want to change that, recognize in advance that there will be some discomfort, lack of familiarity that goes along with that. And that really, knowing that really helped me because I was able to say to myself, okay, I must, this is very disorienting. I must be doing something right.
That's the way. That's it. Exactly. That's great, Jean. Glad you brought that up. You want to go with that anymore? Is that?
Nope.
Yeah. Yeah, no, what we tend to think reality is whatever we're used to. And we tend to think that whatever we're used to is the way it ought to be or the way that's real. So if you go and move to a foreign country, or if you even have a long stay in a foreign country, like a 6-week vacation or something, and you're speaking a different language and you're going through all these changes and you're not one of those buses that has a bunch of other Americans in it, or this could be being watched anywhere in the world, but it's not like just your homelanders, then when you're in that foreign country, you adapt. And it's almost easier to leave some habits behind. And after a little while, you sort of start to get used to the new ways things are done. But the old ones will always be there because they're so worn in deeply to come back to. But it's really true what Jean said. When things get messy, it's a sign of progress. Because they're all screwed up, it means you're not in your regular safe territory anymore. You're actually carving out of the wilderness, like a machete, cutting through all these pathways and connecting new neurons together. But you're connecting a new life together. Let's talk about it at that level. You're piecing together little by little. And lest we leave people with the idea that it is a long and endless, arduous struggle, really significant transformational change is possible in as little as 12 weeks. 84 days is the magic number that the research literature shows for people going from feeling like they're just doing something to actually feeling like they are a different way. And all that is getting used to a pattern that you begin to then identify with who you are. Because when you do something new, what's the first thing you say? You say, I can't do this. Or I don't know, I don't think I'll ever learn this. And those are what it feels like to be carving out a new pathway. Now, there are geniuses who sit down and they can, from just listening, play a musical instrument and all that. They're outliers, outliers. But most of us learning new things, we've got to go through learning how to learn, which means consistency and persistence. Things that if you've been really bright and you were always able to figure it out in your head or do it really easily, you may balk at that because you feel like it's not what you're used to, it's not your strength, and you're not really, frankly, used to doing things that you're uncomfortable with at all. It's all been easy. That's another trap that leads to self-sabotage, and it's almost the self-sabotage of sort of worshiping our gifts and our talent and our potential more than what we really accomplish with them. So keep that in mind. Now, do we have, Brandy, any questions at this point? We're at 45 after the hour. Everybody on this call is busy. I do not want to keep people hung up, but I want to really be of value to anybody who's got a question or an issue. So, Brandy, is there a question anybody's asked about change or process of doing things or anything? Where are we?
No questions, just everybody saying that they're really enjoying it. Valerie just said this is a great webinar. I love the information on changing habits. Mark McDonald said it sounds fine here. Justin said thanks so much for the update, Ken. Really enjoying the Google Hangout. And yeah, so no questions. So yeah, maybe we put that out there, you know, before we go off air. Does anybody have any questions or any sticking points that we can answer before we end this broadcast?
Or anything they'd just like to hear the panel riff about regarding a place that people can get stuck, or they've heard of people getting stuck, anything. If you do, put it up, because we'll go at it. Okay, what I want to say then is the reason for talking all about this is not just so you'll feel better. It's because it makes a difference in your career, and it makes a difference in your personal relationships. Everybody that's been working with me in the Breakout Year Academy has seen significant changes in the way they do their work, the way they approach it, and the way they live. They've also seen remarkable changes in their relationships, some that they didn't predict and actually weren't even expecting or looking for. It's like they take it as a bonus. Not that it's always easy, because nothing having to do with change is easy. If you're changing, you're working to assimilate it. It's new for you. But your partner or whoever's close to you that may be affected by changes in you could be anything from threatened to thrilled, or just bothered by this new side of you that they didn't really expect or weren't used to. But in the end, when it gets worked through, if you're operating at a better level and the person that you're with loves you, then you're improving. You going into new territory is something that even if they have a little awkwardness, be compassionate for your changing things for them. And don't go, oh, yeah, look, I improve, and then they don't like it. There's no reason to do that. They're just having their own little hard time or slippy-slidey thing about some of the changes you're doing. And then, of course, there are times when it all goes completely swimmingly. You change, people adapt to it, and it all goes well. And that usually happens when there's conversation. So keep that in mind. One of the ways you can defeat yourself for sure and sabotage yourself for sure is to not be talking to people who are important to you. The more you converse and let people know what's going on for you, and you do it in ways that are effective and not aggressive, the better it is. But you need to kind of have it out every once in a while. You could have an appointment every night with somebody you care about and just make sure everything's clear between you before you sack out.
Okay, so we did get a couple questions. Remember, there's about a 45-second delay on the Hangout to the questions. So Cindy Anderson would like to know, can you address laziness a bit? I'm not an overachiever, but more of an underachiever. I know how to relax. How do I fire up?
Okay.
Hello.
Looks like Jean's got this one.
Well, I can definitely address that to a degree because I have always said that I am a type B person trapped in a type A world. And so maybe that's some of it. And I am very good at relaxing. You know, nothing makes me happier than being on the couch watching a stupid movie on Lifetime or something like that. So having said all that, I think what I've done is define what I really wanted to get out of life, and I think focusing on my goals and figuring out that I needed to devote time to those things if I really wanted to make them happen was the way that I found to be productive. And I'm not convinced that laziness is really what's going on for people so much as for me, I would say it was some of the low end energy that Ken has talked about because of maybe mood or saying disparaging things to myself about myself. So there was a piece of that. And then the other thing is just, yes, it's very easy for me to be relaxed and not necessarily be productive, but I think some of that sometimes is really fundamentally about some kind of fear around either not knowing what path to follow or how to figure things out, or fear of failure, or all of those kinds of things.
How's your tolerance for frustration? Because I know a lot of people who call themselves lazy get frustrated fairly easily, and they'll be tenacious sometimes, but certain kinds of things they just throw up their hands and give up.
I have to say that probably that is one of the key things that I've been able to cultivate through my work with you, Ken. I really feel like it's just one of those things I've now been able to tell myself that frustration is going to be part of any learning or growth process. And just knowing that persistence and tenacity have to go hand in hand with success. That understanding and that acceptance going in that that's going to be part of the package. And if you want to be successful, that you're going to have to find ways to tolerate some of that. And you've just really helped me cultivate that understanding and helped me with the skill of persistence, really persistence. And if you look at, I'm a big quotation person, and if you look at successful people, persistence comes up over and over again in many, many successful people's quotes about what made the difference in their lives. Persistence, persistence, persistence. So.
Yeah. I had a chance to sit down with a guy who did very well with a software company, and it turns out he grew up in Korea and really was in very difficult straits growing up as a child in Korea in terms of even not being sure where he'd find food and that kind of thing. And he sat down with me for coffee, and we were talking, and I had met him through circumstances that I won't go into, but this was before he'd begun his desire to develop a software company. Anyway, he told me that he failed 31 times before he figured it out. But he said the difference between persistence and stubbornness is continuing to look at your results and being willing to go back one more time and try something a little new or a little different, to keep watching for how you could improve. to view what you were doing, in essence, he didn't use this word, but in essence as a series of uh, like first models, first efforts, first drafts. He had 31 drafts before 32 came through, and 32, the night he reached the success, he had ducked the IRS all day long because he was overdue on taxes, and he was hoping this payment was going to come in. That's the kind of tenacity and persistence you need. But he said he saw people, and he said, I was this way myself early on. He said, I was stubborn. I would just keep doing the same thing over and over again until I got it, that I needed to look at the results I was getting and what I could actually change or improve that might make a difference. It was very inspiring to me because he's actually done extremely well, and it's a story that when you talk to this guy, it warms your heart, because he really didn't want to live the life he lived as a child, and he's not. But he's still got problems. He's still got things he's got to deal with. Every new rung you arrive at brings its own problems. So you'll keep working, but you got to be persistent, or you'll just stay exactly where you are, and it may not be where you want to be at all.
So Ken, we got just a couple more questions, so I want to get them in before we wrap up. So Valerie French Strickland said, does everyone have an inner critic in their head? I think we'd all say a resounding yes on that one, right? So that's Terry Torque would like to know, what's the very first step? Again, that came in about 4 minutes ago. So when we were talking about maybe changing habits is what was the very first step. And then we have one more after that to answer as well. So.
Okay, with Valerie Strickland, Freud called it the superego. It's always been around, and all you can do is have one that's a little more rational and not so attacking. The second question was, what's the very first step? I think the very first step is getting real about where you really are. In fact, I know it is. It's what research shows. And sometimes it takes a while for the need for change to register for us. So pay attention when little thoughts or feelings cross your mind, when you feel a little bit out of sorts, and look and see what that's all about, because there's a message in a bottle there that something's not feeling right, and change is what needs to happen. But the first really active mental engagement is for you to do a real self-inventory and say, where am I now and what am I really doing? You've got to get real about where you are so that you can have a realistic plan for where you want to go. Okay, the next one.
Mark McDonald has a great one. He says, in the 84-day trait-to-state transition, what exercises can build the habit of persistence? It's one of my great sticking points.
You know, I don't have time to answer that, unfortunately. I have persistence as one of the master skills that I say people really have to have, and it is one of the master skills that's mentioned in my book, Your Own Worst Enemy. You can get that on Kindle. You can get it, go from my website. There's a link to Amazon. But persistence is something you have to cultivate. And one of the ways you cultivate persistence is to remind yourself. So some people who are working on persistence put Post-its all over the place. They use timers, and they know they have checklists, those kinds of things. Those are some of the tools. But to really look at persistence, I would turn you on to my book, Your Own Worst Enemy, Breaking the Habit of Adult Underachievement. But Post-its, timers, things that are like checklists, those are great things as tools. And we got another one, right?
Yes.
Or more?
Yep, one more. So Suzanne says, I'm a mature student. I have found that I am struggling to find motivation to study or turn in assignments on time or at all. How can I break this habit?
Wow. I would want to talk to Susan. Is that what you said? Is her name was Susan? Well, anyway, I would want to talk to the person who asked this question and say to you, person, are you doing what you really want to do? Is school somebody else's idea? or is it your idea? Because motivation has to do with making something your own, and the most powerful motivation there is intrinsic motivation. Intrinsic motivation is motivation to do something because doing it is so worthwhile, it's so satisfying to your curiosity, it's so energizing to you to do it, it's a project that has meaning for you, something that's worth doing in and of itself that you do if you could and not even have to be paid for it. That's the kind of motivation you want. When it's extrinsic motivation, when it's a reward or approval or pay, or somebody says you need it because if you don't have it, you won't make it, those are usually the things that slow you down. And it also may be you're taking some classes that you're not that tuned into, or you're at a school that you would love to have be better. But you need to build an internal fire about some things you really want to do. And I would suggest you maybe take a semester when you do nothing but classes that really turn you on, that aren't to fulfill obligations and class requirements, so that you can get that taste again for how juicy it is to be alive and to be learning. So that's what I would say with the limited amount of time I had. Hey everybody, this has been fantastic. It's been great to be with you. I appreciate your questions and attention. And Brandy, thank you so much. We went off with hardly a glitch. I'm looking down at the little panel so I can see Brandy. And thank you, Jean, for making it. Thank you, Lolita, for your contribution as well. Thank you for the ones who were going to come and couldn't make it at the last. And thank all of you for being here. Look me up on maxpotential.com. That's my website. And you can find out more about what I do there. And also, like my 2 pages, Your Own Worst Enemy, Breaking the Habit of Adult Underachievement, and Max Potential. So with that, Brandy, goodbye. Thanks again.